Welcome to the Iowa Economy Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Conetzkey, president of BPC and publisher of The Business Record. The Iowa Economy Podcast is your place to get the economic insights you need to help your business stay ahead of Iowa's economic curve. We've got a great guest with us today. It's going to help us digest a little bit what's happening, what might be happening in the future. With us today is Nate Schelhaas. He's a senior vice president, actuary, and head of the business owner segment in benefits and protection with Principal Financial Group. Nate's been with Principal for 26 years, and he's held multiple roles with the company. He's also well-versed and an expert on Principal's Well-Being Index, which is a comprehensive quarterly study of the financial health of U.S. employers. And that's what we're really here to dig into a little bit more today. Nate, I'm excited to pick your brain a little bit. Our newsroom's written about the most recent survey, but there were some really interesting data points within the survey, and I'm looking forward to exploring that with you. So why don't you first just introduce yourself a little bit, talk a little bit about the survey.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation we get to have today. It's an important thing we do, and we've been doing this for 10 years. And we quarterly survey 1,000 business owners, key decision makers, employers, and ask them a bunch of questions about the financial health of their companies, about their view of the future, and what they think is going to happen. It's been interesting. We ask the same 6 questions at least every survey, and we've been tracking that for the last 10 years. And as you said, quarterly, so that's roughly 40 surveys or so. And for this year, we're seeing that the index that we track, it's a composite score a little bit on a scale of 10, is at 6.5, and that might sound good, but it's actually down from 8 last year. And those 6 questions really get at the financial health of the company or the business. And then how do they view what's their perspective on their business, the local economy, which if it was an Iowa company, it would be Iowa, but wherever they're domiciled, they're located, and then the national economy. And so that score of 6.5 has come down throughout this year. It was just 6.8 last quarter and down, like I said, from 8 last year. So confidence from business owners, decision makers, employers is going down a little bit.
So when we talk about that, and I could imagine what some of the factors could be, but what do you think some of the factors, or maybe some of the factors that showed up in the data from the folks that you surveyed that could be leading it to be down a little bit?
My guess is if I asked you what you thought they were, you would probably articulate a lot of them as well. But when you look at kind of nationally, if we start there, and it's really the national economy and some of the local economy that's dragging the scores down. Business owners, employers, they're really confident in what they're doing and how they're doing it in their business. But if you start nationally and you say, okay, what's been going on? It's not hard to see that there's a lot of uncertainty. You can go back to April and Liberation Day and tariffs, and people don't know what that means for them. Rising interest rates is another thing you can point to. So there's the fear of inflation. There's a host of things nationally that is driving down confidence in our national economy. I happen to be talking to a business owner owns a car dealership, not in Iowa here, but in a different state. And the tariff impact for them on new cars, non-event. Because what he said, you probably didn't know, Nate, is that Mexico and Canada, when it came to car manufacturing, was largely exempt. But what was really causing trouble was parts. If they needed a part, it got more and more and more expensive as the tariff battle went on. So it's that uncertainty that's causing business owners to feel less confident in that national economy. And then we'd be kidding ourselves if we didn't think that trickled down to the local economy as well, as prices increase, as bank rates, loan rates increase. So I think it's all connected, but it's really that national confidence, that local economy that's driving down that score. While confidence in their own business might be down just a touch, it still remains pretty strong.
Well, and I believe I remember from the story, it was the third lowest perhaps in the last 4 years. I would imagine COVID would have probably been one of those data points. And then I think if I'm remembering right, you'll have to correct me if I am, but this past April was the actual lowest point, right? Okay.
Yep. And you know what happened in April.
Yeah, right. So that's where there was the big, between November and April was really where it is. And it's kind of continued to stay in that range then since it's dropped, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting, kind of that gap between how large businesses and small businesses. So I think you classify them as more than 500 as a large, those with less than 500 as a small business. Let's see if I've got the numbers here. In particular, small, medium, I think decreased 4.8% versus 1.5%. So I wonder if you could unpack that a little bit, that gap between how small businesses seem to be feeling worse than large and medium businesses.
Yeah. So in addition to how do you deal with things like tariffs, the large organizations have people, they've dealt with it, they know what to do. Smaller businesses, a lot of them don't. It's something new for them. So how do they deal with that? A lot more pressure on them. But it's also the rising costs. If you look at just the cost of goods going up, it's gone up for 6 straight months. Over 70% of the businesses we surveyed report higher expenses this quarter. But what the larger businesses are able to do is they're able to increase their prices commensurate with the increase in expenses. If you think about those larger businesses, I won't say their prices are largely a formula, but there's much more of a process. There's much more of a transactional approach where, hey, cost of goods is one input, cost of labor is another, and it comes out with the cost of a good, and that gets passed on to the consumer. If you think about a lot of those smaller, those mid-sized businesses, a lot of those are built on relationships. And those businesses aren't as quick to raise prices. So as I said, nearly 70% of the large companies increase prices. Smaller companies really haven't. And so they feel that pressure more acutely than those larger businesses do. And so I think that is one of the reasons you're seeing that disparity or that difference, even though it's a small difference. You are seeing it between the businesses that we've characterized as large business versus that small to mid-size.
What do you think, and I won't make you play the role of giving advice, but it seems to me that, well, the reality is if you're a small business, I'm going to look at the person that's buying advertising from us in the eyes, right? Like I'm going to know that person, right? And
right.
The further you get away from that. And so I understand that dynamic, and that really does but small businesses also have less margin oftentimes in place to be able to absorb that. So that type of pressure is a lot for businesses. So
it sure is. And if you think about a lot of the smaller, newer, mid-size, even the mid-sized businesses, a lot of those folks didn't set out to start a business. They started doing something that they loved and they were good at, and it turned into a business. And so they're not out there trying to, I know how to maximize $1 of profit. They're like, hey, I do this thing. I do it well. I like it. And I've had to add people as I go. And so it's not always the running of the business that is the primary focus. It's actually what they're doing. And so, like you said, that margin pressure, they're not maybe as quick to react. So I think there are a number of reasons why you're seeing smaller businesses maybe show a little bit less confidence than some of the larger businesses.
Well, in some of the historical data, it looks like small businesses typically are below the large businesses across the board. But what I think has happened is it looks like that gap is starting to widen, right?
Yep. No, you're exactly right.
Right. The one other factor that I saw in there, small businesses weren't anticipating as much growth as large businesses. I would imagine that uncertainty would be a component of that.
Yeah, uncertainty. And then, I think there's something around artificial intelligence as well. And we have some questions around artificial intelligence. I think that you are seeing larger organizations being able to take advantage of that more quickly than some of the smaller to mid-sized businesses. The interesting thing though, even across the spectrum, if you look at AI, the companies that are using it or expect to use it, they do expect to grow. They expect wages to grow. They expect staffing to stay the same, maybe grow. There's a lot of conversations, especially if I'm going to call them the ultra big companies out there, the really big corporations where you maybe hear in the news about people laying off staff because of AI. We see people saying, yeah, we want to take advantage of artificial intelligence, but we think our staff is going to be about the same, maybe go up. And that's roughly just less than 80% of the population we surveyed think staff is going to stay the same or go up. 60% of them think wages are going to increase. And that's really getting at taking the type of employee, and you're going to have to hire people or pay people that know how to develop artificial intelligence solutions, that are able to utilize them, implement them. So I think there's a lot there as well around taking advantage of that artificial intelligence for growth, whether that's a large company or a smaller one. I just think the large companies are ahead on that scale than some of the smaller ones.
Yeah, and in general, the gap on one of the questions was about the ability, I think, to upgrade the technology and whether they were planning to invest in that. And there was a large gap there between the large and the small businesses as well. So indicative to kind of what you're talking about.
Yep. And part of that, if we go back to the cost and the cost of healthcare going up, that I think the larger organizations have a bigger base over which they can spread that, and the smaller ones probably don't quite have the same ability. And so, healthcare has become a big concern for both small and mid-sized businesses. It's been in the top 5 pretty much forever, but this year it jumped to number 1 as one of the biggest concerns. But in spite of that, and you hit on it, still 62% of the businesses blend between small and large do expect to grow. And they expect to increase employees, expand their production footprint, if you will, maybe new products, new services. So even in spite of the rising costs, healthcare concerns, there is still that expectation for growth. And you're right that it is large. It is a stronger expectation in the larger companies than the smaller ones, but it does still exist in the smaller and mid-sized ones as well.
The 23% that expect AI to influence staffing increases in the next 1 to 2 years, was it positive or negative in terms of whether they thought they were going to increase or decrease?
So by and large, positive. And there's, I think we had 6 categories that either staff is going to increase, decrease, or stay the same, and then wages are going to increase, decrease, and stay the same, and some combination of those. And as I said earlier, nearly 80% of them expect staffing to stay the same or increase. And so they're really getting at increased productivity. So when they think about that, they're thinking that they're going to be able to do more with the same number of people. Now, what's buried in there is it might be different people. It might have to be a different skill set than what they have today. And I've heard people say that they're worried about losing their job to artificial intelligence. I don't think actually that's the concern. What I've started to hear more is that if people are going to lose a job, it's going to be to somebody that is using AI to do that job. So not just pure artificial intelligence, but somebody that knows how to do it. And my encouragement to anybody and everybody is to start figuring out how to use it. If you've been around the business industry and really any industry for the last number of years, there's always been this hot button topic. 10 years ago, it was big data. Then it was blockchain for a little while. That was going to change the way we pay. And now it's AI. And I think this one's going to be here for a while. I really do. And I just encourage people to go out, figure out how to use it, spend time, test it. I was at my folks' house not too long ago, and I saw my dad using his iPhone, and he was going to use Siri. And my dad grew up in Minnesota, big Twins fan. So he's like, "Hey Siri, what was the score of the Twins game the other night when I think they might have played the Reds or the Red Sox? That one guy hit a home," and this is all on Siri. And then Siri can't help him, and he gets frustrated, and we all kind of laugh at him. But I was reflecting, talking to my wife on the drive back. I'm like, at least he's trying. He is trying to use the technology that's out there. And so I encourage everybody to try to use AI. Mess around with ChatGPT, mess around with Microsoft Copilot, whatever it is, figure out how you can use it, because it is a tool that will allow some of those smaller companies to compete in a way I don't think they've been able to before.
Quick question. Do you break it down geographically at all, the survey?
We do not.
Yeah, okay. Gotcha. I just know as we've been doing some of the previous episodes of the Midwest and Iowa in particular, our economy has been affected in a little bit different way, in a more impactful way, I think, than some other regions. So I was curious if the survey had any of that into that. I want to go ahead and move into just taking a little bit of peek to the future. I won't make you predict what the next survey will say, but would love if you could give maybe just something that you're kind of looking forward to seeing in the next survey, or something that you're curious about watching as we go into the future.
Yeah, there's maybe 2 things that I would point to, and I appreciate the question. The first one I would say is interest rates. There's been some hesitancy, I think, from small to mid-sized businesses to borrow money, to make capital infusions from that, just because of where interest rates are compared to where they were 15, 18 months ago. They were really low for a long time, and people got used to it. Shot up to 6.5%, 7%. feels really high. I think if you look over the span of history, it's maybe not that high, but coming off that type of environment, that low interest rate environment, to 6.5% feels really high. And so people have pulled back from borrowing. I think we've seen a slight decrease in that interest rates are too high mentality. So I am curious to see if there is some more borrowing for growth, borrowing for infusion, whatever that might be. I'm curious to see that. So that's one thing. The second one, and it's not something you can look out into the market and see, but specialized talent around AI, I think that is going to be at a premium. It is, we found that nearly 40% are concerned about finding qualified employees for artificial intelligence. I think that will continue to be a focal point. And it is one of when you think about what business owners, decision makers, employers, HR, what they can do, is it's putting good programs in place to attract and retain talent. And that attraction and retention of talent, that is something that has been going on for years upon years upon years. And so that's the thing I'm going to continue to watch is, does that talent grow, or does it stay kind of a specialized skill set, or does it become more prevalent?
When you look at the survey, what I'll ask is two parts, but we'll start with the scary part and then the positive part. What maybe worrying signs would you say that the survey that you just recently conducted would share for the future? What should we take away from that might be concerning?
So I think it is that overall index number in the decrease of it from 8 to 6.5 in 12 months time. That does cause some concern. And I do think it's by and large due to uncertainty and concerns about, well, I don't know what, I could wake up and see something new in the news I didn't know was going to come. I think as or if things settle down, I think you will start to see a return to more confident in both the local economy and the national economy. So that's the thing we'll be watching. That's the thing that maybe concerns me. If you continue to get great news, bad news, great news, bad, people don't know what to do with that because it comes out so fast. You can't really plan for short-term fluctuations like that.
And so to flip it on the other side, what positive signs maybe were within the survey that would make you feel more bullish about where the economy is heading in the future?
Part of it will be that view on interest rates. Last quarter, it's come down between, I think interest rates are really high to, maybe they're not so bad. So I think some of that, getting comfortable with the interest rate environment, will allow people to get comfortable maybe taking a loan. It snowed here recently. I was driving back from Colorado. I've got an old snowblower. I've wanted a new one for years, but I just don't like to spend money on that. And we're coming back, and I'm just thinking about having to get this thing out of storage. And so I start thinking about a snowblower. And my wife looks it up, finds one at a local store, tells me the price. And that's a lot for me. But as I think about it more and more, I get comfortable with it. By the time we got home, and granted it was a 9.5-hour drive, I was ready to pull the trigger on a snowblower. I think it's the same way with interest rates. Boy, that seems high, but as you spend time thinking about it and looking at it, you get comfortable with it and maybe willing to take that loan. So I think that is a good sign. And then the views on artificial intelligence. It was really encouraging to see people think it is going to help their business, that people are looking at it, that they think, I maybe have the right staff, maybe I don't, maybe I need to upskill, maybe I need to just get some different people. That's also, I think, a very encouraging sign for businesses.
What other factors do you think might need to be seen in order to see that index maybe to reverse course and continue to go forward?
There are things that need to happen with healthcare. I think everybody knows, it's maybe not in the best spot right now. So getting some stability around healthcare, getting some stability around the price of healthcare, it's been going up. General insurance has been going up. Those are the type of things. But, I talked to another business owner. This was just the other day. I called him. I said, "Hey, how's business?" And it's largely a property casualty insurance agency. And his comment to me was, "Nate, it's stupid how much premium I'm getting right now." He goes, "I just don't know why this is." And so there are industries like that that are doing really well. And he talks about certain insurance carriers have lowered their rates when most of them have raised. So there are things that are maybe counterintuitive going on that I think as those things start to take hold and people see, I want to put money back to work, I want to gain business, I think you'll see others follow suit. It'll build on each other and hopefully lift all businesses up. And then as they see they're doing better, their local economy is doing better, that gives them more confidence.
Well, and I think there was an interesting graph in there that showed that people's belief in their own business maybe was actually higher than how they believe the actual local economy or national economy. And I think that's just, again, an interesting dynamic. And I feel that certainly at our business in some ways, like, oh, yeah, these things I'm trying to navigate, we're affected just like other folks are. And but yet I feel confident about the business, right? So that is an interesting dynamic that I can feel confident, yet not necessarily confident about the environment.
Yep, 100%. The somewhat cynical part of me says, well, everybody thinks they're an above average driver too.
Right.
Yeah. But there is something there because you know that business well. Like that is the thing a lot of times that people are passionate about. You know, as we talked about earlier, they didn't set out necessarily to start a business. They started out saying, boy, I can do this and I like it. And then it turns into a business like, I know how to do this well. So yeah, I am confident that I will figure this out. I can't control this. And I certainly can't control the whole national economy, but I can really control this. So yes, it has been consistent that people are more confident in what they're doing than the local economy, which is generally higher than the national economy. So it kind of makes sense, as you articulated, but I think we will continue to see that as well.
Well, Nate, I appreciate the conversation. Anything we didn't talk about today that it was either a finding in the survey or that you're thinking about that you'd like to share?
No, just I'll reiterate. Thank you. Appreciate what you do. I think this is important. It's good to know where business owners, employers, key decision makers, where their heads are, what's important to them. I think a lot of the issues we all recognize, and my hope, my desire, my efforts are trying to help solve some of these problems. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for having me, and thanks for promoting the survey.
Well, we appreciated the survey. I like that type of survey. Sentiment is so important. It's such an important thing. I remember one of the first economic forecast events that I was moderating. It was coming out of the recession. So I think it would have been 2011, 12, somewhere in that range. And I remember somebody had made a point about just optimism in general, that if people just start to believe that things will be better because you start to make and so we've always done a little survey with our audience, and it's just a 5-question rate the economy, right? How you feel like it's going to be in the year ahead. And what I had seen in that data, I was curious. So I had everybody in the room stand up if they were, I can't remember what the scale is off the top of my head, but if they were feeling at least semi-optimistic or neutral or above. And, most of the room was standing at that point. And it was just an interesting moment where you're going, there was all this uncertainty, yet everybody was actually feeling, and it was like, okay, there's something here that's going on. So I appreciate this type of survey because it gives you a glimpse into how people are feeling, even if that's not necessarily reflecting what is happening on the street at that moment, because that's what could happen. And that's what we're trying to do with a program like this and what we try to do with our reporting. So I appreciate the effort you all put into that. We'll provide, of course, a link to the survey and our past coverage on this as well, so that you and the audience, you can have an opportunity to take a look through that. We typically report on that quarterly survey each quarter as it comes out, because we think it's a good data point for you to be able to look at. Big thank you again to Nate for helping us make just a little sense of the economy and providing us with a peek around the curve at what we should be watching in the months ahead. If you enjoyed today's show, of course, please like and subscribe and tell your colleagues. As I said, we firmly believe we're stronger as a community when people have better information to make better decisions. That's what makes your business better and our community stronger. So thank you for watching. And until next time, keep your eyes up and peering ahead of Iowa's economic curve.